Hello again, whiskey friends. Hey, thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. And for this week's review, I am like super excited about this because I did not even know about this brand just a few weeks ago. And now I've got this bottle that I absolutely adore, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. What we're going to be going over today is Old Line American Single Malt. This is coming out of Maryland here. They are a local distillery within Maryland, and I'll get into how I learned about them and why it's blown me away ever since as I make my way down through this bottle. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So let's get a tasting here so we can go through the tasting notes together before we get into the official scores. And then for today, let's see if that'll show up. I got a Cheech Glen. Look at that. Ooh, that showed up real well. Cheers, Cheech. Go check out Whiskey Encore for some late night shenanigans and fun. But yes, on this review, we are talking about Old Line American Single Malt. This one is particularly a store pick coming from Barflies. I'll get back to that for those that aren't familiar with the area in Baltimore, Maryland. And man, I mean, look at this thing. Let's see if the sticker will show up. Come on, let's see if it shows up. There we go. If you can read that, it says $50. I bought this for $50 at the bar, man. A $50 American single malt. I mean, the age on this, I don't know for sure, but man, I am going to be guessing 7, 8 years, something like that. Ridiculous. So, how I came across Old Line, we went to Summer Jam, which was a whiskey meetup that was planned by the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. So, cheers to Jason, cheers to Scott. And we were on Sagamore Spirits Farm, and Maryland had this law where only distillers from Maryland could serve at this tasting event. So Jason and Scott were able to bring in various Maryland distilleries to provide samples to the group and to sell some bottles. So went around each tent, was trying everybody, and then I got to the Old Line tent last, and immediately I tried their cast strength, and I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is this?" It's coming to me in this little tiny plastic cup, and all of a sudden, I'm, like, blown away by it, blown away by the sweetness, blown away by the flavors, especially for an American single malt. Worked my way down the line, including some of their rums. Loved everything. I bought a bottle there at the event, and then afterwards, we went to Barflies for dinner, only to find that they had a pick as well that was, like, super dark compared to the one that I just bought. So I bought another one. Now, at the bar, I actually got to try this before I bought it. Once again, blown away. We're going to get into the tasting notes here, but holy crap, the purest Hershey syrup note I have ever experienced. Like, it is just like pouring Hershey syrup into your mouth and then just drinking it. What doesn't sound bad about that? So, when it comes to American single malts, too, I mean, we've been getting into them more and more, I would say, in the last year. Had a lot of good experiences with Shanahan's, Westland, a couple others come to mind. This is my favorite right now. This is my favorite American single malt that is out there. I mean, this stuff is just incredible. I can't wait to try more Old Line just to see if this one is like off profile, if this is the profile, all that type. I will be exploring some Old Line, and thus you can hear the excitement in my voice. I'm clearly going to go to the end of this video and be recommending this bottle. So let's get into the tasting notes before we get into the official scores. Thanks for joining me this far. Oh man, the nose. It's not over the top, but it is very, very interesting and inviting. There is this dilemma going on between these vanilla notes, but then these dark notes. The oak on this thing That's why I think it's got to be like 8 years, maybe more. Plus, you're talking about different climates there. Oh, the oak on this thing balances with the vanilla. Sometimes it turns it into a bit of a root beer kind of sensation with that. When you got the balance of those dark notes in the vanilla with the root beer. Dive deeper, the vanilla does start emerging a bit more. There's a bit powdered sugar, vanilla frosting. And then ultimately, if you sit with it long enough, it does start smoothing out into a creme brulee, probably an extra burned creme brulee on top, but a creme brulee nonetheless. And then fruit wise, I didn't mention any of the fruits, but I would equate this to the stone fruit type of area there. Um, Little darker than an apricot, a little darker than a peach, somewhere in between the peach and the plum. It just kind of rests in that zone. It's just a melody of those type of flavors. But I have a problem pinpointing exactly which one I want to call out. So we'll just say stone fruits in general. All right. Well, let's get into the taste. Cheers, everybody. Mm, golly. Whew. Absolutely love the mouthfeel on this thing. I mean, just everything I want. It's so viscous. It's so oily. I mean, my glass is absolutely obliterated right now. If you can kind of see what's happening to this Cheech glass. I mean, the oil on this thing is just nuts. So that translates to this very, very lovely mouthfeel. There's a lot of dark brown sugar initially. Some, I would call it raspberry jam, maybe a blackberry jam even, but maybe more of a darker raspberry. And then just a lot of baking spices for days. Let's get into mid palate. Mm. Oh, mid palate. Mid palate is where the chocolate goodness. Oh gosh, that Hershey note. The chocolate goodness comes into play with this particular one. I mean, we're just talking about chocolate on chocolate. Take some chocolate fudge and then pour some Hershey syrup on it and then eat that. And that's what mid palate is. Oh my gosh. Lacks complexity, so that is going to come into play at the final score. I mean, it's kind of one noted in that sense. Like once it's chocolate, mid palate, it's just that Hershey syrup note. I can't get past it. Now it's a really good note though. It's quite delicious, but not a whole lot else to dive into there. Let's get on the finish. Again, Hershey, the purest Hershey syrup note I've ever experienced. There's even a little bit of brightness that comes in on the tail end of the finish. I'd almost equate it to a peppermint patty, but I'm not even talking about the candy peppermint patty. Like I'm talking about, back in my 20s when you would pour Hershey syrup into your mouth and then get a little peppermint schnapps and then pour that in and then swish it around and have a shot. That's kind of how it finishes a little bit there. Not quite as aggressive on the peppermint as what I just described. Maybe you just do a little splash of the peppermint schnapps, but it's like a peppermint patty on the finish. It's delicious. Ugh. All right, one more sip and let's get into the scores. Oh, that's so good. Gosh darn, I love that. So then getting into the scores, here in the channel, we got a three-tier scoring system, whole bunch of metrics behind the scenes that go into this, but ultimately we can summarize things into a flavor score, an experience score, and a value score. Flavor is where, of course, this thing is shining quite a bit. You can see the excitement on my face. Gave it an 87.5% of the possible points when it came to flavor. On experience, it's got some good depth to the nose. When you think about me talking about that balance between the vanillas and the dark notes and the stone fruits and the creme brulee, and it's got something going on in the nose. But then by the time it gets to the palate, all that complexity disappears. So that brought it down just a little bit in terms of being more one noted, but it's got the mouth feel, it's got the long finish. I'm still getting a little bit of it right now, even. So it's got a whole lot of great things going on with the experience. Just that lack of complexity held it back. And then ultimately, value. Oh my gosh, $50. $50 for this thing. You got to be freaking kidding me. This is ridiculous. I kind of just need somebody to go to Barflies and get me a backup even. Like I don't know how this thing costs $50. On our spreadsheet, we even fill in like what you'd be willing to pay for this experience. I put $100. That's how much I love this thing. I think it's literally worth twice as much as I paid for it. And I don't know. That's not something that I say very often. That's just how much this one blows me away. It is absolutely delicious. So 10 out of 10 on the recommend. Do I plan to buy another? Yes. I want to explore some old line. Oh my gosh. It is so amazing sometimes in this whiskey hobby when there can be a brand and a distillery that has been around for all these years and suddenly you just find them and it's like your favorite thing ever. That's the fun part about this is finding the fringes and getting into it. But man, Old Line, recommend Old Line. Try them out for me. All right, one more sip and let's close this thing down. So let me know in the comments, is this the first time that you've heard about Old Line? Have you tried them before? And what were your impressions of their products? And did you do the single barrels? Did you do the various finishings that they do? Oh my gosh, that sherry one that I had at the sample tent, oh, that still sticks in my mind as well. I can only imagine how amazing that would be at cast strength versus the 100 proof. Maybe Old Line's doing picks of the finishes. I don't know. Man, I don't know a whole lot about them, but it's time for me to find out more. So let me know some more in the comments what you know about them, and then you can come back here for another whiskey review later. Thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello